Honoured to be here.
It's a fascinating story. Just start us off with how far back this history of magic goes in India.
Well, look, it goes back to the Harappan civilization. So you're talking about 3,500 BC. And at that time, what you're looking at really is the use of talismans and amulets and charms. And so it's more a sort of sympathetic magic than entertainment magic, which is the primary focus of the book. But pretty much from about the 6th century BC, you start to get a lot of evidence of entertainment magic. So we're talking about jugglers, conjurers, mountebanks, and so on. We get references to them in the royal courts. There are references to the rope trick, for instance, in some of the Buddhist Jataka tales, which do date from the 6th century BC. So it goes back a long way.
How deeply linked is this tradition of magic to religion in India, specifically, say, Hinduism?
It is very strongly linked, yeah. There is a god of magic, Indra, who casts his net of magic across the world and spins this concept of Maya or illusion is very much tied in with magic for obvious reasons, because magic is illusion in a sense. But that is pretty much the main distinction between magic in India and magic in the West, because in the West, the conjurer will not make any pretenses to the fact that what he or she is doing is anything other than magic based on scientific or rational grounds. In India, even your lowly street conjurer will always play with those boundaries between secular and religious magic, and use that to enhance his own powers, if you like, or his own hold over his audience.
And were the magicians or performers from a particular caste or a particular ethnic group in India?
Look, they do tend to be from the lower castes. When the British arrived in India and they started to categorise these groups, they found out that a lot of these jugglers, as they were known then, because that's what they were called, because a lot of their sleight of hand or their acrobatic acts or their physical dexterity, they associated that with juggling as they'd known it in the West. They found out that a lot of them came from these lower castes. Many of them were nomadic. Some of them were related to groups of gypsies as well. They were eventually classified as criminal castes as well, and therefore persecuted as a result, and always remained marginalised. But they were both Hindus and Muslims.
What was it about the conditions that existed, do you think, in India? I mean, you've touched on the fact that there are religious and spiritual origins and connections, but what is it about the conditions of that country in particular that led to this fertile spreading of its mysticism and magic?
Oh, look, I guess it was tied up strongly with religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism as well, and plus this very, very strong tradition of magic as entertainment, as a form of, as a cultural, as an art form really, which you find evidence of that goes back a very long way.
So what kind of impact then did British imperial control over India have on the development of magic and on its global notoriety?
Well, look, I guess the main effect was Indian magicians actually made it to England. So what happened in about 1813, the captain of one of these Englishmen, one of these ships that sailed, did the route between England and India, he spotted a group of jugglers, as they were known, in Madras, offered them a passage to England and the promise of great pecuniary rewards if they accompanied him. It was against their caste to cross the Black Sea, as it was termed then, because they would lose their caste purity if they did that. But they decided to go anyway. And this first group of jugglers, there was 3 of them. They performed at Pall Mall, and they were a sensation, and really changed the face of Western magic as a result, because the sorts of things that they could do, sword swallowing, juggling balls, throwing stones over their shoulders, balancing acts, as well as extraordinary sleight of hand tricks, just captured the public's imagination. So it had that was really one of the main effects of that colonial.
And this was a new form of entertainment in England that the audiences had not been exposed to
They
before?
had never been exposed to it. So, for a long time, people had read about, these wonder workers of India. You would get references to them in travellers' tales, in memoirs, in books like Marco Polo's travels, for instance, and so on. But this was the first time they'd had any direct contact with them.